Welcome to the Be Well at Usask podcast with me, Peter Headley. In each episode, members of the Usask and wider community will join me to share ideas and provide guidance on all aspects of being well. And we'll be highlighting campus initiatives and resources designed to engage and support you. In these challenging times, we hope the ideas and information we share will help. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to Heaven Berhe, the president of the African Students Association at the university. We're going to be talking about racism and how we can have uncomfortable and important conversations in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement. Well, welcome to the podcast, Heaven. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So can you start off telling me a little about your own background and where you find yourself today?
Well, as you said, my name is Heaven Berhe. I'm an Eritrean woman. I'm currently living in Calgary. I just graduated with an anatomy and cell biology degree from the University of Saskatchewan. Today, I find myself feeling blessed to have this conversation and to educate people on these matters from my time in Eritrea to the time that I'm sitting here right now talking to you.
Well, that's great. I know I really appreciate you being here. And so to that point, with the events in the United States since George Floyd's murder on May 25th by a Minneapolis police officer, the Black Lives Matter movement has ignited demonstrations across the world and this dialogue about racial inequality, harm, and injustice in the world. What has this time felt like for you personally, and what have you observed within your own community of what this has meant?
I'll give you a picture of something that I went through last night to give you an idea of this. That video, 8 minutes and 46 seconds, I hadn't watched it. It's like a horror to watch that. To see that, you think of your brothers and your sisters and your friends, and how that could have been us. That could be me. My skin could have caused that for me. So that's what this time is for us. It's how much we every day is a survival. People live their lives. We are surviving life. That's what it highlighted for me. And the minute that started, we started having conversations with our friends. Well, for me anyways, I started having conversations with my Black friends. And what is coming out right now is how scared we are, or how we downplay our experience in schools, with our interaction in the healthcare system, our interaction with our professors, with our, just everyday life, how we downplay how much it affects us mentally. That's what this time has been for us. And the other part of it is talking about it with allies and people that perhaps do not experience what we experience, is how much they do not know of this experience. The shock that I hear from people when I tell them how this affected me or how this affects us. It's like, what? Why? And that what? Why? It shows me how different our experiences are. And so that's what this time has been. But the other part of it is also it has given me hope to see these marches. So many people of so many different races, colors, coming together to help each other. So even though I cry now and I feel my heart racing, I'm also hopeful to see those marches and to see that this will be a change that will be forever remembered in history.
And perhaps maybe touching upon what you were talking about, people who learn about these things rather than living them, is certainly this idea of privilege. What, from your perspective, what does that word privilege mean, particularly in reference to this moment in history?
Privilege to me, and I've seen a lot of people say, well, I go through this and I go through that. Privilege isn't about you don't have problems. Everyone has problems. It would be absurd for me to say that you don't have problems. So it's not about what you go through. It's about what you don't have to go through. You don't have to go through this feeling that I feel right now. That was, you asked that question and these emotions are coming out because I'm connected to that. I bear the skin that caused his death. I have to have conversations with my sister. That's just in grade 9 about how to navigate friendships when her friends are calling her the N-word. I have to have conversations with her teacher to explain to her why she shouldn't ignore when my sister is being taunted. I have to have conversations with principals of her school with her present there to explain to them what that word means. How dehumanizing for my sister for me to plead with the principal to take her pain seriously. And that's something that a lot of people don't have to go through. And conversations with my siblings about how to talk to those in office so that they're taken seriously. Conversations with myself about how I should have my hair when I go into interviews. That in itself is privilege. I can't go into an interview with my hair like this because I won't be taken seriously. I have to put on a wig, or I have to, make it more tame so that it doesn't intimidate the other person. That in itself, if you don't have to do that, is privilege. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if you can speak on that. I would believe you would have, a comment on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely recognizing that I'm white, male, European. I'm a settler in Canada. There's lots of realities that you just touched upon that are not realities for me. And I have sons, so I have white male, sons, and there are things that I will take for granted that we don't need to talk about. Their interactions with the world, the way the world will treat them, the way the world will see them. And as you say, it's not because there aren't problems and challenges, but I know that's very different for other people. And I think particularly, the way the world sees people. I saw this heartbreaking video on social media this week of a young black child, a female, talking about that she was ugly. And this perception of the color of her skin, and it was a family member saying, "What are you talking about?" And it was genuinely heartbreaking because it's not the child's perception of themselves. It was that sense of the way the world sees them. And I guess for me, it's just a human being, but I know that's not the reality. And so it's simple things like that. You just think, but why is that? And maybe we can come on to that. And so when you hear the word racist, what does that mean to you?
Well, to be a racist, I really like the definition that Professor Ibram Kendi uses in his book, How to Be Anti-Racist. And so a racist is someone that supports racist policies or expresses racist ideas. And that, when you think of the word racist, it's just discriminatory or prejudice that you hold against a group of people. They might be a minority group, or it could just be towards a person because of an idea that you have in your head. And I say an idea that you had in your head because it comes from somewhere. And so by that definition, anyone can be a racist. I, as a Black woman, can be a racist. Even though in our community, there's always that saying that, no, Black people can't be racist. No, I do believe we can be racist, because if you support anything that harms a group or you express an idea that you heard it from somewhere, that to me is a racist. And in our community, there is the idea that Black people can't be racist. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. If you're someone that supports a racist idea or you express a racist idea, you're racist, period. It does not apply to one group over another. And that's just something I wish more people kind of reckoned with so that we can work on this together.
Yeah, I particularly like that idea of someone saying, well, I'm not racist. You're either racist or you're anti-racist. There's no such thing as not being racist.
Exactly. It's not a spectrum. It's an either or.
Yeah. So when we talk about racism, we're obviously not just talking about individuals who hold racist beliefs, that racism doesn't exist in a vacuum. How do you see systems of racism playing a role in influencing and indeed empowering individuals?
That, I think, as you said, it's so much easier to talk about racism on an individual level, because then it's so easy to debunk it, to say, well, no, I'm not racist. I never say those things. I never do this and that. I have a black friend, so I can't be racist, or something like that. But I think more people need to look at it from how it's an up-down type of thing. So you had to have had systems and structures that informed the either individual, institutional, or interpersonal racism that we see. It comes from our laws. It comes from how our societies made up, policies are made up to kind of trickle down. So if you think, for example, in Canada, look at the Indian Act. That's because of a system. That was a law in place. And now you see it informing the types of ideas that people have about Indigenous people. It didn't just come out of nowhere. It had to be informed from a system. And I wish more people had kind of like a reckoning with that without the structure, we wouldn't have had the fight that we're having right now.
So when it comes to questions of sort of discrimination in general, can we talk about intersectionality for a moment as it relates to that, and maybe something you can explain for listeners who may be unfamiliar with the concept?
Yeah, I learned about intersectionality from a friend that's actually in the psychology department at the University of Saskatchewan. And he was explaining it to me about how it came to be. It came from the Black feminist movement. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I think it's Kimberly Crenshaw that coined that term. And it talks about how there's different forms of oppression, for sure. So you have sexism, you have racism, you have ageism that exist on their own. When you're talking about intersectionality, it is about how they coexist with each other. So the perfect way he explained it to me, and I thought it was beautiful, was a Venn diagram. So let's say you have sexism and you have racism. They coexist on their own, but you have that middle section where someone can fall there. So if you have a white woman, let's say, she would face sexism as a woman existing in this society. But let's say now you have a black woman. A black woman faces both racism and sexism. And so those two have a way of interplaying with each other. And you can't just look at them as separate things, because they coexist in this woman's life, in this black woman's life. And so when you look at the experience of people in terms of intersectionality, you won't downplay their experience. And you kind of then will work with the oppressions, or work on removing these oppressions all at once, instead of just looking at them individually, because they interplay with each other. That's how I understand intersectionality.
I think that's a big part of the conversation for a lot of people. But again, when we talk about people with privilege, they do fall into these categories, but actually they're not harmful in the same way. I know I went to a conference a number of years ago, and there was a really excellent passage, and it was from one of the leads from the LGBT community in Vancouver, and was asking a series of questions to us, and it was a stay standing exercise, and it was about questions of privilege, whether you could walk down the street holding hands with your partner, and a number of other different things. And it was so enlightening for me to look around the room, and for those of us who were still standing, or those who were not. And so these questions really are identifying a lot of those pieces around intersectionality that some of us, and myself included, do not have to consider, do not have to deal with. But it's absolutely an important point, and one that I think many people are not aware of.
I agree.
So, let's talk locally for a moment, because we've seen Black Lives Matter demonstrations in Saskatoon attended by several thousand people. And as you say, that was great to see. But same thing in cities across the globe. So in your experience, what does racism look like in our province or our city, or even in our campus environment at the university, and how that affects the lives of people from racialized minority communities?
I think a lot of the times, I'll work on it this way. When we are talking about racism and microaggressions within the university, because that's normally how we experience it as students and members of the Saskatoon community. When you try to talk about these things, they say, no, well, at least it's not as bad as the United States. And I do believe that's a way of hiding it, but it does exist in our community. It is there. As someone that experiences it every day, it would be insulting to tell me that it does not exist. So the not so serious way that people try to say, not try to say, but the things that people try to downplay are things like having to anglicize your name. To many people, that's like, it's convenient, so why not? But how dehumanizing to tell a person, to look a person in the eye and say, your name is difficult. Can I call you this? That is a person's name.
Has that happened to you?
It has not happened to me because my name is Heaven. I don't know if you can anglicize my name more. But people have said to me, well, what's your actual name? People automatically assume that I changed my name to Heaven to make it easier. But I know my friend, that's also a member of ASA, an executive member. I've been with her, standing with her, when someone has asked her that, well, do you have an easier name? Uh-huh. And she said, no, my name is this. And they said, well, can I call you this? And they tried to shorten her name. But our names hold meaning. They have huge meanings that when you either anglicize them or change them, you've taken a part of us. Things like when we go to stores, I've gone to the convenience store opposite our university, and I've tried to be seen by the owner so that he didn't think I was stealing. That's just something that we think about all day, or we're followed around in stores. That has happened to me at the mall downtown Saskatoon, where I noticed someone was following me, and it is the most unnerving feeling to have that. Mm-hmm. When we're driving around with our friends, we have to be careful. Please don't break anything. Don't do anything. Just drive. And where does that come from? It's because we have an inherent fear of the police.
Because that assumption is what? What is that assumption from those people who are looking at you?
That I'm going to steal. That I have the skin color and I'm somehow a criminal. Mm-hmm. But I'm not. And it's even worse for Black men. My friend Jonathan, I was just on the phone with him, and he said to me, it really used to piss me off when I go into the library at Murray and I sit at a place and the people next to me pack and move to a table just a little farther away. That hurts. That's within our university.
Wow.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I asked that question about the assumption, and I know it's stating the obvious, but I think sometimes the obvious needs to be said. This is what people are thinking, and this is what is informing their behavior and how they treat other people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when those things happen to people, what is that feeling? And again, I know I'm asking obvious questions, but I think it's important to clarify what is that feeling. But also then, what is the barrier to people actually reporting certain types of behavior?
Mm-hmm. Well, the feeling is just numbness is how you feel. We, as the African Student Association, we are collecting just, information about the experience of Black students in the university. And it's so disheartening to hear the hurt and the lack of hope that it's not there. And it's like, what does it matter anyways? They're not going to believe me, or they're not going to do anything about it anyways. And so there is that, it's almost like I'm not even deserving of this help. It really breaks my heart to hear these things. And it only comes out when they're speaking to someone that understands that problem. And a lot of times I'll ask, well, why didn't you report it? And they would say they wouldn't understand it, that there's no way that they could ever feel my pain. And so I really don't know what the barriers are. I can't pinpoint it, but I do believe a lot of it comes from, we have different realities. And so when you're speaking, there is that maybe perhaps fear that you will not be heard. There will be no different outcome. And as someone that has helped a student report an incident where another student from the University of Saskatchewan was blatantly sending them videos where they were just yelling racial slurs at them. And to this day, after reporting it, we still don't have a clear understanding of what happened to that student or how it was handled. Who am I to say as Heaven, well, let's go report it? Because I can't even give this one student an answer of what exactly happened or how it was handled by the university or if there was any disciplinary action taken. So there's that. There's lack of trust in the system as well. So,
and I guess I should say, so there is a discrimination harassment prevention services at the university to which formal complaints can be brought. I guess part of the challenge there is often one of confidentiality about the process itself, and some of the difficulties is reporting back to the people reporting. But it's a great point to make that if someone is identifying harms, what is that piece for them in terms of the follow-up and actually the understanding of sanction and consequence and process. So for sure, I think that's a great flag. But I guess we should say, just to clarify, there are formal channels and complaints processes through the university that students can take, and indeed supports. And I'll mention some of those at the end of the episode. So we're at a moment in time where I think all of us feel a little bit more optimistic, perhaps, that change that we need to see is possible. But I think there's equally a risk that time moves on, and this was just that moment that was missed. But I think we know that kind thoughts are not going to be enough, that actually action and togetherness is needed. What are some of the ways in which those in the community could actually help begin to correct some of the injustices and create the equal and just society that we actually want to see?
That's a beautiful question. I think one of the things that's giving me hope in this time is seeing the allies. Just everywhere, there's so many people that are aware of these situations, and they're really trying to help. And I'm so thankful for that. Thank you for taking the time to learn about this, to help. And so to those people, I just have a few ideas to share with you so that your help is actually moving us forward. A lot of the things I'm seeing right now is outrage from some people that they didn't know about these things. People are mad that they went through the whole of their high school career, if you will, and they didn't know about these injustices that were happening to marginalized groups. But please use that outrage carefully. Your outrage somehow in a way highlights your privilege that you didn't know this. This isn't the first time that we've cried out for help, that we've cried out for policies to change. This has been going on for years. And so I say to you, please educate yourself more. Learn about slavery, colonialism, eugenics. But don't stop at that outrage. Share with people. When you're posting on social media, be cognizant of who's seeing it, how it's being perceived. Be kind in that sharing. A lot of people are stopping at, wow, I learned this today, and, Black people are going through this. Please don't stop at that virtue signaling. Sign petitions. Talk to your friends and say, how can I help you? That is helpful during this time. Please don't, once you are aware and you're helping, don't shame others. A lot of people work at different paces, and shaming others is not going to do anything during this time, because you are helping from a point of privilege. If you are shaming others, they might take it out on the marginalized group and say, I'm being shamed because of them, So it's very complex. So really, really be aware of how you're participating. Don't be scared to get it wrong. Ask questions. That's what we want. We want you involved. So and this might seem very like, what? Why are you saying that to me? Be kind. Be kind to people of color. Smile, smile at them, say hi. Those little microaggressions that we face daily, a smile can really, really change that. Say hi, like where we don't bite. And, just have these conversations. And I will say this quote by Dr. Brené Brown, because I think it's beautiful during this time. She said, when you're being held accountable for for racism or racist acts. We're not shaming you. But if you feel that shame, use it to create a change. And so, yeah, for those people that are helping us, again, I say thank you. And just be more aware of how you're helping.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. I was talking to my children recently, and it was nighttime, and we switched the lights out, and they said they felt afraid. And I said, well, there's nothing to be afraid of. You just what you're afraid of is you don't have any information in front of you. Mm-hmm. And I often think this is it when we're fearful of other people. It's just that we have a lack of information, and so the natural instinct as a human being is to often feel that. Rather than to recognize, well, you actually need to gather more information, at that moment. And as you say, be humble, be curious. And I think often we don't do that. And maybe it's ego, maybe it's culture to just ask questions, because I think people are generally good, I should say. And they do want to help and be kind and all of the things that you say. But I think it's finding a way or permission for them to express that. I was in our local Korean and Japanese supermarket recently with my son, and we were walking down the aisles, and he was looking at the food, going, what is any of this stuff? And I said, but isn't that exciting? It's really new. The world just got bigger because we just walked in here, and there's all these things that you didn't know existed, and isn't that cool? And I think often we miss that piece around the excitement about new things and people. And I'm a little biased because I've been working with international students for 20 years, in my career, and know how cool it is to have that, that melting pot of different cultures and the excitement. And having spent the last 15 years living in the UK, living in West London, where we have an incredibly diverse community and the richness that actually brings. And it makes me think of a quote that one of our faith leaders recently shared with me from the African-American writer and civil rights activist Audre Lorde. And she said that it's not our differences that divide us, it's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. What's your reaction to her words in terms of the world that actually you want to see or that we need to build?
I so agree with that, with that statement. I think it's a beautiful quote. A lot of the times we all want to be so similar and just ignore the differences instead of celebrating them. I think the differences are what makes us stronger. As you said, it's exciting, but there's fear of that different. And that fear, as you said, comes from that lack of knowledge. And I'm so thankful that you did that with your son, where he said, wow, how exciting is that, there's so much that we don't know. I wish more people had that way of thinking when they looked at something that's different. It's okay to be scared when you don't know, but then how do we move from that? Learn about others. There's so many people that say, well, if you're not happy with Canada, then just leave. But that's to me, and I'm sorry if I offend anyone, but that's a very lazy statement for me.
I agree with you.
And it's learn these differences. The fact that Canada is a multicultural place is a strength. It's a way for us to coexist and enjoy each other, learn about different places without even having to go there. We need to celebrate each other's differences and connect on our similarities. And so I hope more of that happens.
Well, I agree with you. I think you sort of mentioned it a moment ago, but you also need to know the history. And I'm relatively new to Canada, about 6 years, and I've needed to learn that, and I continue to learn that. You have to come to it pretty humbly, and particularly as a privileged white male from Europe, you do have to come. And I like this idea of cultural humility. I think if we had a little bit more of that, we wouldn't have some of the challenges we have. But yeah, no, I certainly appreciate the opportunities that there are when we actually come together. And I do believe that the city and the university have that richness, and the majority of people absolutely do embrace that. But I think we need to continue taking those steps.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
So if there are students who are struggling at this time or any time in the future, how can they connect with you and the African Students Association?
So we have a Facebook page. It is ASA Usask on Facebook, or on Instagram. Again, it's ASA Usask. If you do not have any of those, you can email us at usaskasa@gmail.com. And we are always checking our emails. You can attest to that. We're pretty quick with responses. And yeah, please reach out. We're always working. If I don't see it, the other 4 executives will do so.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I'm asking all guests on the podcast to share one thing they're doing under these strange COVID situation circumstances, what they're doing to be well right now, perhaps something that brings them joy or a sense of connection. What would that thing be for you, and how are you finding it helps?
For sure, prayer. Prayer is for me. I'm a person of faith. And spending quality time with my family, and having constant conversations, or just playing in the backyard has been really, really nice to know my siblings on a deeper level. They're hilarious. So that has been really, really helpful, just quality time with my family.
Yeah, that's great. So is there a final thought that you'd want to leave listeners with about our conversation today, or anything in general?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you to those of you that are listening and actually are going to take something out of this and, help or change something for the better of society. And to those of you that are working actively to bring change, I just want to say thank you and keep going. There's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of criticism, but please don't let that deter you. Stay on this path. Contact those in power, demand change, hold institutions and businesses accountable, have conversations with those around you, respectfully, of course, so that there is change. I also want to send a message to the president of the University of Saskatchewan and his office. They sent out a letter outlining the changes that they would love to bring to the university on June 17th of this year. I hope that these are not just promises, and that they're actually going to be put in place to bring substantive change. I hope that statement was a contract between the university and the students, to let us know that you're actively changing these things. And I hope when I come back to university in the fall, or I guess in the winter term, it will be a different place than the one that we've been experiencing. And just in general, to have changes in policies and society, we have to work together and have a shared sense of reality. So I hope this podcast did that for you, to understand that we're not that different. We're all human. We all have problems, and we all need to work on them towards a better future. Please lead with humility and kindness. And I hope that my children and my grandchildren and great-grandchildren will have a better life than I have right now. And we'll work together towards equality and equity.
Well, thank you so much. Those are all great choices. And I think that certainly when we speak words and we make commitments, there needs to absolutely be follow through. So I think that's a really helpful thought. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I so much appreciate your perspectives and position, and the work that you're doing in your own life and with the African Students Association to change perspectives, share information that people may not have, and also support students. So thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Be Well at USask podcast with me, Peter Headley, and thanks again to Heaven for joining me and sharing. You can follow the African Students Association on Instagram or Facebook. The links are in the podcast details. Anyone experiencing discrimination and harassment at the University of Saskatchewan can contact Discrimination and Harassment Prevention Services through the link in the podcast details. If you're a student, you can also contact Student Affairs and Outreach or your student organizations, the USSU for undergraduates and the GSA for graduate students, for supports, guidance, and advocacy. So please reach out. Check in again for further episodes and more content related to being well. Please subscribe and share this podcast. You can find us on multiple platforms, including Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We'd also love to hear from you, so please post comments and questions, and we'll look to include them in future episodes. Also, if there's someone you'd like to see as a guest or a topic you'd like us to cover, or even a reaction to an episode, please write to us at bewell.podcast@usask.ca. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking to Ken McLeod, who's a therapist providing care at the Student Wellness Centre. We're going to be exploring the value of reconnecting with nature for greater health and well-being. So until next time, stay safe and be well.